Hi there, I'm Ed Getty.
I'm Geoff MacLean. Welcome.
Yes, welcome, Jeff. And we're going to talk on today. Our subjects on offers and counter offers, kind of an overview of the offers and counter offers, and how important this is we deal with many times buyers and sellers from away, and different states have different laws, regulations. And we need to make sure that our buyers and our sellers here in Maine understand what the rules are here from the Real Estate Commission, how we do business. And we're going to dive into that as we go through this particular program.
Correct. And I would encourage people, if you've got a you can get a copy of, there's a 4-page offers and counter offers guidelines from your Maine Real Estate Commission. And that's kind of the document that we're following here in these procedures. The Real Estate Commission in 2003, 2004 put out that document for use by every licensee when they're listing a property for sale, by every licensee when they are soliciting representing a buyer, for example, going through a buyer agreement prior to showing them their first property, maybe. There's a 4-page document, so having that accessible is so important, and we should be very familiar with it. And the first part of that is the offers and counteroffer process is really central to real estate trans. That's the whole reason we're marketing property, Ed, right? Is to get an offer.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Kind
Yeah,
of central, and maybe the process kind of begins with a buyer's, the sellers don't typically make offers to buyers that show their property. It usually starts with the buyer making an offer to the seller in writing, right? And could the seller just accept it, reject it, counter offer it, right?
right. Yep, yep, yep. Can make various changes, prices, conditions. We go back and forth sometimes, often,
Yeah.
until we come to some final agreement. And all this needs to be in writing.
And it goes back and forth, written offer, written counter offer, verbal counter, maybe go under contract. That's kind of a normal one, and in a crazy seller's market, maybe there's 25 offers for the seller, and then you'll never get a counter offer. Your first offer may be your only attempt, to attract the attention of the seller in that case. And then when both parties accept the latest terms, you've got a legally binding agreement and it's documented in a purchase and sale agreement. It's got to be in writing. The statute of fraud says it's got to be in writing to be enforceable in a real estate transaction. Different contracts have different terms. Okay. There's different forms and some contracts, tell you when you're under contract. When you deliver the fully executed document back to the offeror, you're under contract. Other contracts don't talk about that. And then the conveyance of the acceptance. Mr. Getty, congratulations, we're under contract. That's the common law. I conveyed my acceptance. My buyer has signed your seller's counter. Ed, we're under contract. My conveyance of the acceptance to you puts us under, and in some contracts that doesn't. Okay, so pay attention. The devil's in the detail, right?
Yeah, whether you're an agent or non-agent makes a big difference.
In that second case of the phone call, yes, but in a contract that many licensees may be familiar with, it's the licensee and they don't differentiate between a transaction broker and a licensee for the delivering of notice. And they did that intentionally. So read the contract to be
Yep.
sure we've got that. So these guidelines, there's 4 pages, right, on those guidelines, Ed?
There are, and Jeff, this is the only other form that's from the Real Estate Commission other than the Real Estate Brokerage Relationship Form. This
Yeah.
is the only other document from them. So they are pretty proud of this. They feel this should be used. And these 4 pages, again, we can go through them a little bit just to hit on some of the highlights. It's
Yeah.
broken down into 4 sections. You've got the guiding principles, expectations for licensees working with buyers and sellers, which is kind of the first page, kind of the overview.
Right.
You've got seller's guidance, again, preparing the seller for potential responses to various offers and counter offers. Buyer guidance, same thing, but for buyers on so they can have some informed decisions on various scenarios that could happen, offers, counter offers.
Yeah.
And then the latest revision that they did back in 2014, they added that fourth page, which is a Q&A for customers, because
Yeah.
they kind of felt left out, didn't they, Joe?
Oh yeah, the customers. What do we tell a customer? That's a great question.
Right.
Yeah, you could ask, but they might not. Well, and we'll get into that in a second. So let's look at that first page, Ed.
Right,
A little
right.
bit more detail here. The guiding principles page. And that emphasizes, consistent early communication at the start of any client relationship. Okay, and
Right.
so the consumer in this situation is that when you're taking a listing. You're talking about motivation, you're talking about the market, talk about the guiding principles, talk about the offers and counteroffers guidelines. Talk to your seller about how offers and counteroffers are handled when you take the listing. Talk about it with your buyer when you list the buyer. When you're going over the real estate brokerage relationships form and a brokerage representation agreement, talk about guiding principles. And the easiest way to talk about the process is to just go through the form. Page one, confirm that decision-making power rests with the client and the agents. I'm advice. I'm an advisor. I'm not a decider. Okay. I don't make the decisions. I give the advice.
Yeah. Don't go the dark side, Jeff. Don't go over the edge, okay? Making the decisions. You advise, client decide.
I'm the backseat driver. You're driving the car, Mr. Client Buyer, but here's my advice. Okay. Offers and counteroffers must be in writing to be enforceable. We go verbal. You can, hey Ed, will you sell for 350? Well, 350 in 30 days. Okay, let me take that back to my buyer. Yeah, we're talking terms, but it's not going to be enforceable until we dot our I's and cross our T's, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yep.
And terms of the offers are confidential unless all parties consent, with one exception, which would be in an escalation scenario. And in an advisory ruling from our real estate commission in Maine in 2017, if you're in an escalation scenario, I won't get into the details here in this brief segment, but if you're in that escalation scenario, the terms of a rejected offer could be conveyed to another party for the purpose of escalating that other party to an under contract, to a higher price, and immediately putting them under contract. So that's the only exception where licensees would not would be able to convey the terms without the permission of both parties, and it's as a result of an advisory ruling, not a law, not a rule, and that's where that stands at the moment. Um, Whether an offer exists or not is not confidential. Full price doesn't compel acceptance. Sometimes we think that, oh, if they offer a full price, they've got to accept it. No, they might have to pay a brokerage commission to the listing broker, full price cash close in a month, but they're not forced to accept the offer. And remind clients that agents are not attorneys and that they should be seeking legal advice from attorneys and not us, right? Yeah.
Very much so. And, full price offer, a lot of times there's a lot of terms that go with that too. So,
That's true. And that sometimes they think, well, hey, we had the highest offer. Why didn't ours get accepted? Well,
right.
it was subject to something that was not acceptable to the other side. There was a condition on that it's more than just the price, right? Price and terms.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the next page here. It talks about the seller client guidance. It says, discuss potential offer scenarios during the listing to help the seller prepare for responses. So
Yeah.
again, we're talking to the seller ahead of time.
Right at the time of listing. Well, wait a minute, Ed. You got the cart before the horse. You're already talking about an offer and you haven't written the first ad yet. Well, hey, every property's different. Every seller's different. It's going to be part of the staging of the property. What's the market for that property? What's the potential? Some potentials have a significant multiple offer potential. Other properties, You know,
Right, right.
it might take a while to sell, and we might our only offer might be our best offer. It's
Yeah.
going to be every property's different, and we're starting the conversation right off the bat when we're listing them.
Well,
Yeah,
I think also, again, explaining those multiple offer scenarios. What are the options if we get multiple offers? What can we do? If
right.
we, again, we're preparing our seller in, and what may happen. And they're just going to feel more relaxed, more prepared to be able to deal with all of this information coming at them.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can accept, reject, they can request highest, they can say best offer by five.
Yep.
Here's the scary part, Ed. The buyer, they might not even know they're in a multiple offer situation to begin with.
The buyer. Yeah. Right. Right.
Because Ed, your seller tells two of the three buyers that they're, or one, your seller only tells one of the three offers that they're in a competing situation because they don't want to scare them away. They want to encourage them. Hey, you're part of a multiple offer situation. I'm only talking to you. If you could make this one change, if you could agree to this counter offer, let's go under contract right now. Right. And they only told one of the buyers that they were in a multiple offer situation.
Yeah.
Agents, historically, some agents have gotten caught because they never talked about multiple offers unless they knew they were in one, and they could have been in one and not even known it.
Right, right. Yeah, and sometimes the seller kind of pits the agents against one another a little bit here.
Yeah,
So, you kind of got to understand that, as a buyer broker, you may not know everything that's going on.
you don't, and buyers think that if that they might have to be disclosed if there was other interest in the property, and that's not the case. And in some markets, some people watching this may have come through a seller's market that you just assume naturally that you're in a competing situation with 30 other of your favorite buyers, friends.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you
I
know,
think also in your little scenario, advising the pros and cons strategies of delaying acceptance of
right.
those other couple of offers.
Yeah, every property is different. Some agents get themselves in a little trouble because, well, I always do this, I always do that. Well, sometimes it always works, but other times it doesn't because every property is unique. I'm fond of saying that two listings on the same day on the same street at the same price might be in different markets because of the features of the property. You got the you got the beat up Cape Cod across the street from the picture perfect split foyer on the same day in a similar price range. There's a different market maybe for a beat up Cape at the same price as a split foyer that's got a beautiful shine on it. You
Yeah.
know, same property, same price, same day, different market. Every seller's different, and then you add the sellers in. Every one of your sellers has been different over the years, Ed. Every buyer's different. They all have
Yeah.
different aspects that we got to get in touch with. So, one and done guidance doesn't necessarily work all the time.
Yeah.
How about that buyer? What's up there? Yeah.
Well, buyer guy again, explain the buyer's decision making too, the impact of market conditions, kind of similar to what we're talking about for the seller on the buyer side.
Yeah.
Again, prepare the buyers for possibility of multiple offers too. You need to have the same discussion with them. They could be in multiple offer situations, not even know it, or be informed that they are, as you mentioned earlier. So,
Yeah. And the seller may not respond to all the offers. They may prioritize some offers without disclosing. You might not get a chance. You made an offer. Thank you for the offer. We have received it, but you're not guaranteed a counter offer. You're not guaranteed an acceptance. And that advice is going to be market dependent. What's the buyer looking at? What price range? What's the market? We can give them some potential, but sometimes they have one bite at the apple and they'd like to know that. And with those multiple offers, they've got choices. But here, it's not in this piece here, but wait a minute. They might be working with a licensee that is actually working with more than one buyer on the same property.
yeah.
Hey, Ed, thank you for working with me. I'm writing an offer for you, and I just want you to know I know of other interest in the property. Well, how do you know about other interest in the property? Well, I wrote the offer.
Right.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean you wrote another offer on a property that I'm writing? You mean you can work with people that are competing against me on what I want to buy? Yes, we discussed that in the listing agreement. We discussed that in the brokerage agreement. It said it in our brokerage agreement, possibly.
Yeah.
It says it, it says it up above. Remember when we took the brokerage agreement, I told you that that may come about because we talked about these guidelines. And now I'm talking about it when they're getting ready to write an offer. It shouldn't be news to a buyer that you may have other interests. And then they wake up and they say, hey, wait a minute. Okay, Geoff, what do I need to write? How much of an offer do I need to make? How much did that Getty guy offer? Too bad, so sad. Sorry, I can't tell you. I can't
Nice,
tell you.
nice
Oh, come
try.
on, tell me, please. It's like you see all this coming, you prepare them for it, and they're going, well, hey, what do we need? What do I need to do? Hey, I got an idea. We're in a competing situation. Why don't you make your best offer? What's your what's your best offer? What's everybody's different. What's yours? Because this might be our only bite at the apple. You
Yeah.
know?
Could be. Besides, there could be another, several hundred other licensees out there with
Yep.
buyers that may have interest too. So there,
Yep. And
just
as
like
we
you have one more.
Yep. And as we move to the next page, I want to remind us again in this segment that there's a lot in these 4 pages, and we're not giving you every word of it here today.
Right.
Get that document, review it, have it with you because it covers a lot, and it's actually a pretty cool to be able to refer to that information provided to us from our real estate commission about options because it kind of adds some credibility to it. And I'll tell you, when you get into discussing this with your client says, hey, maybe I'm getting what I'm paying for, working with you, because you're giving me this advice, right?
Wouldn't that be wicked cool to add to your value proposition, all
Yeah.
right, to your buyer and seller?
Yeah. How about that last page of the agreement, that customer FAQs,
Yeah, well, they were feeling left out, Geoff, and they kind of wanted to know what's the deal here. I think we need to at least tell them how the game is played here. I mean, they're unrepresented.
Yep.
Again, to reinforce the importance of written offers, confidentiality of terms, and the right, again, to inquire about other offers. They can ask anything they want, but the listing broker is not obligated to answer their questions,
Yep.
for sure. Again, non-clients, again, can request, but not guaranteed, any information other than information about the property. They remain with full disclosure about any condition of the property, but
Yep.
whether there's other offers on the property or not, that's all dependent on the seller and their agent.
Right.
They may tell them, you know,
Yeah. I mean, the non-client, there's a lot of questions they can ask, and then the answer might be, yes, you're more than welcome to ask that question, but I'm not at liberty to discuss that with you, or the listing agent, in the case the fiduciary duty is owed to the seller in that case, and some sellers may authorize you to, make certain representations to customers versus a transaction broker customer. You don't have any seller telling you to do anything, right? You don't have any listing. You're the transaction broker. You don't represent anybody.
right.
You're not going to, no advice, no analysis. Just remember this customer page, honesty, ministerial acts, and no advice, no analysis, no inspection, no confidentiality. There's a lot of no there. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's why many consumers trade up as soon as they realize that they're interested in some property and they understand how you behave with a customer. Hey, Geoff, do I have another choice here?
Right.
Can I trade up? What's behind door number two? Well, let me tell you, we got a client relationship behind door number two. Let's talk about that, right? And then
Yeah.
you move to page two. I mean, you move to page three. These people want to move. They don't like page four of this document. They want to move to page three, the buyer page, right?
Yeah, I think that's where that real estate brokerage relationship form helps out a lot too. And it gets them to understand what the differences are. Yep.
So let's wrap this section up here with some concluding thoughts on. We kind of touched on it. Every transaction is kind of unique, isn't it? You know. Yeah. Every
certainly.
every seller, every buyer. That was a big aha for me years ago. You know, there's no cookie cutter. Everybody's different. And as soon as I try to do the same thing with different people, sometimes I very quickly find out that they're not the same. You know, they have different expectations. But I got to always adhere to guidelines that promote professionalism and transparency, you know, in the relationship. I'm there to serve them, you know. I'm the agent, they're the client, I'm the servant, they're the master, you
Yep.
know.
Yep. Early conversations again on offers and con, the whole process. Again, it helps the clients again prepare and reduces the stress. I think that's a big plus here.
Put that right in. Start early. You can't start early enough.
You
You know,
can't.
and understanding and following the guidelines that we're referring to here, it's going to foster fair negotiations, safeguard the interest of both the buyers and the sellers. They know the landscape. They're working with a professional, you know, and I'm demonstrating that the value of the advice that I'm giving based on the presentation of this material. And it's interesting. Many licensees may be watching this. They've kind of possibly conveyed these guidelines to their consumers, you know, via DocuSign, via PDF file. Have we ever really spent time explaining and discussing it with them? And I think that's a big aha. And when you take that time to do it, you're demonstrating a value that is going to, pay dividends for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So take a look at the offer, counter offer guidelines from the Real Estate Commission. Maybe
Yeah,
print them out, have those on maybe on your computer, present them, and I think you're going to look awfully sharp.
yeah. I like looking sharp. Let's do it. Thanks, Ed.
Okay.